I want to get right to the heart of something that in coaching cycles and in hiring cycles always comes and rises to the top. And you see it with what happened with David Culley,
Mm-hmm.
and now people are pointing to Mike Tomlin as sort of a champion for this. I want to ask you, somebody who's been in the front office,
Mm-hmm.
and this is kind of a weighty question and a big one here. If you're the owner of a team or the president of a team and you're hiring a coach or a general manager, what incentive do presidents or owners of teams have to not hire the best guy, whether he is black, white, blue, Chinese, a woman, whatever? It is it's a business that's built on winning,
Mm-hmm.
right? You get more if you win in the NFL. You want to sustain success. So if I look at a candidate and I look at somebody and they're an African American, they're a black guy, or I look at somebody and they're a white guy, and I say, does it not just always boil down to who can help me win the most games? You're in a very unique position to answer this question, Doug, and that's why I wanted to ask you.
In a perfect world, absolutely. That's what you got to love about sports, because it is black and white, and I mean black and white in wins and losses. And again, that's the perfect world. The biggest issue with the NFL, and I was around it for 20 plus years, especially it's getting worse and worse. People don't hire the best person for the job. They hire the person they know the best. They want to feel comfortable because there's so many extra things that go into this job, between the media scrutiny, the amount of money that's involved, the pressure, and then guys that people trying to climb the ladder in unscrupulous ways and not on their merit and how good they are. They're doing backstabbing and stuff. So people like to insulate themselves with people they feel comfortable and they trust.
Do you
I
think
think right
coaches
now trust is bigger than ability when they're hiring.
Do you think coaches still get passed up for jobs because they're black?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. And I say it this way. It's one of those things where you hear a lot of owners or decision makers saying, well, I just feel comfortable with this guy. Well, there's a lot of things you can do, the NFL can do, to make owners and put them in settings where they can get comfortable with people that they're usually not hanging out with.
Mm-hmm.
So you have marquee events like the Combine, the Super Bowl, the Pro Bowl, the owners meetings. That's where you should have a whole host of up and coming potential head coach candidates sit down with owners in a non-interview setting and just sit down and break bread with them and just talk about philosophies, about ball, how they would construct a team, different situations. So, and then I would say do it with teams that don't need head coaches. So when they start going out and they do need head coaches, they have a background. Or when another team needs a head coach, the owners get on the phone. Hey, you talk to this guy. What do you think? And that's how you can break down that barrier of not feeling comfortable, because a lot of these billionaires aren't going to hang out with head coaches until they hire him.
So, in your opinion, is the Rooney Rule doing what it was established to do? Is it getting minority candidates in those situations, in an interview, for example, where maybe they wouldn't have been years ago, or is it just another box to check?
It's a box to check, and it's helping guys learn how to interview, but it's not helping them get jobs, obviously. So the intent of the rule was there, but just like any rule or any law, think about tax codes. There's going to be ways where you can skate around these tax codes and these tax laws. These rules, people are going to save face and say they do it, but it's not really what it's intending to do right now.
That thing you described, I mean, it's so simple.
It is.
And why isn't it done? Because, I mean, and maybe describe what it's like at those owners' meetings and where people go off in cliques or guys that they know, and how is there, how come what you're suggesting isn't done? Because it seems like it'd be so easy to do.
I don't know. I mean, I know this much. Troy Vincent's been at the league office, and he's racking his brain and trying to figure out ways to increase minority hiring. And again, like you said, when you go into these owners meetings, got people. It's natural. It's just like when you're in high school. You're always going to go to the people you hang out with, and when you go to your reunion, you're going to say hi to everybody, but you're going to end up hanging out with the guys you hung out with or the people you hung out with.
Yep.
And that happens at the owners meetings. So you have to find a way to break that cycle. And I've said this on the air plenty of times. I've talked to Troy, and they're thinking about trying to institute something like this. But I think that's the easiest way, to find somebody that you have a connection with outside of that pressure packed of an interview. Because when you're on an interview, everybody's shoulders are up and clenched tight, and they're sitting there. They're not who they are because you're going to spend an extraordinary amount of time with that owner and with that GM and with that president in pressure packed situations. And you got to be able to sit there and have those hard conversations and saying, hey, either the coaching is bad or the personnel is bad or we don't have the cap space or owner, you're not giving us the money. You got to be able to sit there and talk to somebody like that directly without someone getting their feelings hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you have that connection and that common ground of saying we're in this together and it's not me attacking you, it's everybody getting called out for not pulling their weight because we're trying to accomplish one goal. And that's where some guys have different agendas. And when you have people with different agendas and it's not the same, and that's why the Steelers was so great to me. And that's one of the things that may have been a detriment. I just assumed everybody was out to win championship.
Well, that's my naivety. Like, that's my naivety in all of this, too, is that if you're the Dallas Cowboys in this last cycle and you sit there and you go, okay, and Jerry Jones, I don't know if he's a good or a bad example or whatever, but maybe I'm naive that I'm put myself in that president's shoes and I have all these underlings or the owner of the team's shoes and all these underlings, and I bring in McCarthy and I bring in Marvin Lewis both. And I just simply say, all right, guys, let's cut through the BS, not to them, but to the people making the hire with me. Who's going to win more football games for us? Like, I'm naive, I guess.
You are naive, and I was too, because what happens is that president starts getting protection. Like, all right, who's going to be that guy that can save face, but if he falls, it doesn't point to me? So that's where you start getting some of those. And it's not there at the Steelers. And that's one of those things. That's why it's such a unique organization. Everybody there has one goal. Do the best you can at the job you have to help us win a Super Bowl. And that's not the case in other places. And I've been other places. And I'll tell you that right now.
So, I mean, from my perspective, Doug, it's always seemed to be that, look, I just pulled up the list of owners or chair people of NFL franchises. And there's, I think, one minority amongst the bunch, and it's Shad Khan.
Yeah.
And so until you have, I mean, this is just my opinion. You tell me what you think. My opinion is until you have a principal minority owner who is comfortable with someone also a minority being in the ultimate seat of power, you're gonna have, and a lot of people, it's not latent racism. No. It's that sort of passive racism that they don't even realize that they're actively participating in when they say, well, if I sit down with Marvin Lewis and Mike McCarthy across from me, it has nothing to do with the color of the guy's skin. I just think McCarthy's better for the job,
Right. And you hit it perfectly. You said it perfectly. Until you've changed the color of ownership, you're going to have a harder time to change the color of GMs and head coaches, those people in those power positions, even presidents. Look, we only have one minority president, Jason Wright at the Washington Football Club. So, but I also say this, it's hard to tell someone how to spend their money. Colin, if I told you, you have to do this with your money, you're going to be like, wait a minute. You don't get up at 3 a.m. and drive in here and get on the radio and talk for 4 hours.
But I'm different. Like, I'd spend my money to simply find the person that would try to help me win the most football games. And I 1,000% mean that. Whether it was Jim Caldwell, whether it was Mike McCarthy, whether it was McVay, or whether it was whomever. That's how I'd spend my money to try to get the best return, which in the NFL is winning football games.
I totally agree with you. And you would think that in a perfect world, that's it. But these guys are going to do what they want to do because guess what? Their egos are huge because they're billionaires. And you don't get to be billionaires by just lucking into something unless you're a couple, second-generation guys. So they said, I built this on my decision-making and my ability to find that person that can get me to the Super Bowl, and this is what I believe in. You can't tell me who I need to hire and how I need to go about my business.
Well, real quick, do you think that there should be fundamental changes to the Rooney Rule? Do you think that there should be a body that looks at kind of a fact checker in terms of how they carry it out with teams?
I mean, that's so subjective. My biggest issue now, especially with now that they have rewards where you get a third round.
Right.
I struggle with rewarding people for doing the right thing. I think that sends the absolute worst message. You're doing the right thing, trying to get the best candidate to win you a Super Bowl and make your enterprise value go up immensely and pad your pockets more, but I'm going to reward you for doing the right thing. I really struggle with that, and I think that sends a horrible message to not only the NFL but to the public in general.